A little while back, there was a soft announcement for the KDE Linux distro project, which then got pulled down, but the ISO is still available and various other pages were available, but the main page was set to a draft. There was a whole big mess there. This is a first-party distro from the KDE project, which is explicitly not KDE Neon. It's doing a lot of things very differently from KDE Neon, and that's going to be a direct point of comparison. And now we have a proper announcement from Nate Graham, who you may know from This Week in Plasma, you may know as a KDE EV board member. He shows up in every KDE bug report, and I've had him on the podcast a number of times at this point. This is very much still considered an alpha release. So even if Nate says, oh, I've been having a great experience using it, be mindful if you want to use it in production. Things can go wrong. It is an alpha. Now, for anyone entirely out of the loop here, KDE Linux is a new operating system. It's a Linux distro, let's not be fancy here, intended for daily driving that showcases Plasma and KDE software in the best light and makes use of modern technologies. We'll get into what that means in just a bit. KDE Linux uses Arch packages as a base, but there is no package manager, and everything except the base OS is compiled from source using KDE's KDE Builder tool or Flatpak. It's an immutable Arch-based distro. Some of the tech might be different, the goal is different, but just think of SteamOS. What's in the alpha release? This edition includes unreleased KDE software built from source. It's software built from the Git branch directly, rather than a tagged release. Nothing too crazy. In practice, we're being quite conservative, and it's already pretty darn stable for daily use. In fact, I've had KDE Linux on my home theater PC for about 6 months, and it's been on my daily driver laptop for 1 month. Since then, I've done all my KDE development on it, as well as everything else I use a laptop for. It really does work. It's not a toy or a science experiment. Keep in mind, Nate is very heavily involved in the KDE ecosystem. So, yes, it might be stable for Nate, but he's in that situation where he's used to using KDE. Now, because this is basically just built from existing components, it's going to be a lot more stable than plenty of other alpha releases out there. But it is an alpha. Note that there are going to be problems. It is not marked as stable yet. It is totally normal for developers and people around an ecosystem to dog food the software they are working on. That doesn't mean it's going to go as well for you. If you're not comfortable dealing with bug reports, if you're not comfortable dealing with Git builds and things like that, just wait a bit and come back to this later. With that in mind, because it is in progress software, you're gonna notice bugs, and that's the point of an alpha, that's the point of a testing edition. Report the bugs as you find them. If the bug appears to be caused by KDE Linux design or integration, go to invent.kde.org, and they have a section. They require logging in apparently now. This is new. They have a section on there to report bugs. If the bug appears to be in a piece of KDE software itself, like Plasma or Dolphin, such that it will eventually manifest on other operating systems as well, then you have the KDE Bugzilla instead. This is just the normal place to report bugs. Wait, apparently I don't need to sign in. Why did it send me to the sign-in page then? Whatever. I'm not gonna think about that. Now, there are some things that are explicitly never going to work. Computers with only BIOS support, not UEFI. If you have a computer released in at least the past 15 years, probably longer than that, it's gonna support UEFI. Loading new kernel modules at runtime. This is a problem with it being an immutable system and proprietary drivers for pre-Turing NVIDIA GPUs. So post-Turing, they're actually using the open source drivers. For pre-Turing, you've got to use the proprietary drivers or it's kind of gonna suck. And there are licensing issues around shipping those directly in the image. Now, some distros don't care about those issues, others do. Is NVIDIA going to come after you for doing it? Nobody really knows, and this is just a precautionary thing to do. And this link here takes you over to the wiki page, which will have the most up-to-date list of non-goals. Also included is VirtualBox support, because out-of-tree proprietary nonsense drivers, and vendor-specific VPNs that require out-of-tree kernel modules that cannot be redistributed with the kernel due to licensing incompatibility. This does not apply to every single VPN, but there are definitely some exceptions there. If you want the most up-to-date list as of the time of watching, I'll leave this link in the description down below. And of course, it's not just things that are never going to work. Being an alpha, there are things that currently just don't work that are going to work in the future. One of those is right now there is no secure boot support. I know a lot of people don't really care for secure boot, but it is something that should be working as an option. Pre-Turing NVIDIA GPUs require manual setup, immature QA and testing infrastructure. This is just the nature of it being an alpha, and user experience paper cuts in Flatpak KDE apps and updating the system using Discover. These are all things based around the fact that, you know, the whole idea of an immutable system is still relatively new, and this is KDE's first party endeavor into this area. And there are other things that do not work properly as well. A lot of the issues are around Flatpaks for core system applications are still very much not a great experience. There is a lot of work there that needs to be done to iron out issues and make it more pleasant. As much as I don't like snaps, this is one of the areas that, because Canonical wants to do their entire snap system, have a snap kernel, all this dumb snap stuff, they've put a lot more work into making that experience less problematic. And I have the exact same feeling, just what the world needs, another Linux distro. This is a sentiment Nate has expressed in the past as well, and frankly, in many ways, I still kind of feel the same. That doesn't mean no one should make a distro. If you want to make one, that's fine. But I feel like a lot of people make a distro, intend for other people to use it, but don't really have a value proposition for it. This does have one though. Even if it doesn't align with your goals, there is a reason for this to exist. There is a method to our madness. KDE is a huge producer of software. It's awkward for us to not have our own method of distributing it. Yes, KDE produces source code that others distribute, but we self-distribute our apps on app stores like FlatHub and the Snap and Microsoft stores. Obviously not KDE Plasma, and obviously a lot of the things don't make sense on Windows, but they do have some things there, like how, for example, it's not part of KDE, but you have things like Critter on the Steam store. Things get distributed in these proprietary stores as well, because it's a convenient way for some people to use them. Even if you personally don't use them there, they do have users. So I think it's a natural thing for us to want to have our own platform for that distribution too, and that's an operating system. A Linux distro. Again, Nate really likes the term operating system. I think all the major producers of free software desktop environments should have their own OS, and many already do. Linux Mint, obviously for Cinnamon, and Elementary OS spring to mind. And GNOME is working on one too. Yes, there is a GNOME OS that does exist. This is mainly... it's more akin to a KDE Neon. It's not necessarily something end users are going to be running. It's more about a good test environment to work on GNOME software. Besides, this matter was settled 10 years ago with the creation of KDE Neon. Is it only 10 years old? Huh, I thought it was older. Our first bite at the in-house OS Apple. The sky did not fall, everything was beautiful, and nothing hurt. The main reason the sky didn't fall is, well, basically nobody works on KDE Neon, and basically nobody uses KDE Neon, so there's not much it could bring down with it. For the 5 KDE Neon users out there, it's not cancelled. However, it has shed most of its developers over the years, which is a problem, and it's currently being held together by one singular heroic volunteer, and the KDEV has been reaching out to stakeholders to see if they can put something together to make sure it doesn't die, but no decision has yet been made about its future. While Neon does continue to exist, KDE Linux therefore does represent some level of duplication. As for unnecessary, that I'm less sure about. Harold, myself, and others feel that KDE Neon has somewhat reached its limit in terms of what we can do with it. It was a great first product for KDE to distribute our own software and prepare the world for the idea of KDE in that role, and it served admirably for a decade, but technological and conceptual issues limit how far we can continue to develop it. Neon is a weird product because it's built off of an LTS base while shipping the latest KDE software, so you can't just do that. That doesn't work. So they need to replace a lot of those core libraries with more up-to-date libraries, and as you replace more of those libraries, other things have to be changed as well, and it's this kind of like mishmash LTS, partially up-to-date system that has all of this up-to-date KDE software running on it. It's held together with glue and prayers, and hopefully it all works. This is just not the greatest environment to be trying to ship up-to-date software on. If you want an LTS, you probably want it to be a proper LTS where everything is also being LTS. If you want something up-to-date, you generally don't just want your desktop up-to-date, you want everything else up-to-date as well. So it wasn't really fitting a niche outside of the KDE developer. We wanted KDE Linux to be super safe by default, providing guardrails and tools for rolling back when there are issues. This is pretty standard in your modern immutable system nowadays. For example, KDE Linux preserves the last few OS images on disk automatically. Again, pretty normal. Get a bad build, you can just roll back to the prior one. If you're using Silverblue, I assume Bazzite doesn't disable it. If you're using pretty much any other sensible immutable system out there, you're going to be able to do this. We also wanted to settle on a specific KDE software development story, with the OS built in the same way we compile our software locally, using KDE Builder and Flatpak Builder. This should minimize differences between dev setups and user packages that cause unreproducible bugs. Yes, this is something that happens, and this is something that is a giant benefit to KDE developers to not happen. You don't want to have bugs that appear on user systems and not on developer systems. That's a real bad situation to be in, and you're going to waste a lot of time trying to work out how the hell this bug has happened. Now, of course, I know a lot of people aren't a fan of immutable systems, aren't a fan of Flatpaks, and all this good stuff, and that's fine. That is totally fine. Feel free to ignore KDE Linux and continue using the operating system of your choice. There are plenty of them. The goal here isn't to take away from Fedora or Arch or Gentoo or Kubuntu or anything else out there. The idea is to have a first-party distribution of KDE software. If you want to keep doing those other distros, nothing changes. Why an immutable base OS? Isn't that really limiting? Yes, but also no. In my opinion, the traditional model of package management in the FOSS world has been one of our strongest features, as well as our most bitter curse. It is amazing that anybody can just go and build a distro. That's a cool thing. It is amazing that you can just go and swap out packages in runtime, and assuming it's not something like systemd or your kernel, you don't have to reboot. There's very little things that you install on your system where you have to reboot. You can install Vim, you can install a bunch of Vim plugins, you can install an entire browser and all of these different things, where on Windows, a lot of things just say, hey, power off now, enjoy your life, come back in a bit, and probably it'll work. Linux, of course, you need to reboot. Anyone who tells you you don't need to reboot is lying to you, but it's not as much. But I guarantee that every single person reading these words who used a terminal-based package manager has used it to blow up their system at least once. Whether it be, you lose power during a system update, or you uninstall things that you didn't mean to uninstall, and yeah. And this honestly can be worse with some of the GUI tools, especially the newer GUI tools, and especially the older GUI tools, like newer as in less developed GUI tools, where they put you into an unbootable state after an upgrade. This can happen, this will happen, and you need to know how to navigate this on a traditional system. The pitfalls for non-experts are nearly infinite. Their consequences can be show-stopping, and the recovery procedures usually involve asking an expert for help. No expert around, back to Windows. Most people will just either go back to Windows or say, oh, distro broke, time for new distro. Oh, something broke on Fedora, time to install Mint. Something broke on Mint, time to install Ubuntu. And just cycle around all of their distros until they run out of distros, and then go back to Windows. Over the past 30 years, many package-based operating systems have made improvements to their own system-level package management tools to smooth out some of these sharp edges. But the essence of danger remains. It's inherent in the system. So in KDE Linux, we take on that risk and we do the system-level management for you, delivering a complete OS all in one piece. If it's broken, it's our fault, not yours. And then you'll roll back to the previous build, yell at us, and we'll fix it. So there is some discussion on using KDE Linux in production devices. So not just having this be a thing where developers can use and it's a thing they can directly recommend to users, but try to get into that position where you can actually buy a device running KDE Linux. By delivering the OS in a complete image-based package, we can perform safe updates by simply swapping out the old OS image for the new one. There's no risk of a half-applied update or local package conflicts or anything like that. It's also super fast once the new OS image is downloaded, that is. This is a part that people don't often talk about with these image-based systems. The update process is generally quite time-consuming, and there are often going to be issues when you have data caps. Image-based systems in their current state generally do not play nicely in this environment. There is work going into play for downloading only the parts of the system that have changed, but I don't think anybody has actually finished that work. Now, this section here is just an explanation on how you can use Flatpak, snaps, app images, compile stuff yourself, and all this good stuff. You can use Homebrew if you want to, and install new software on that system. But that's not enough power. I want to change the base OS. There's another option for developers and super power users, one that does allow intermingling stuff. You can use systemd sysx to overlay files of your choice on top of the base OS. This can very well break things, because you are going to be somewhat interfacing with that lower underlying system. But because it is an overlay and not directly modifying those files in place like you would on a traditional system, it is still relatively easy to roll back those changes and put yourself back in a clean state. But if you don't know you can do that, and if you don't know how you can do that, you could very well put yourself in a situation where you're stuck trying to work out how to fix this. So be very careful when it comes to running any commands using this. If you don't know what you're doing, don't do it. But for developers like Nate, I've started using it in KDE Linux to overlay my built-from-source KDE software on top of the base system for development and testing purposes, and it's just been a super great experience. Way better than compiling stuff to a prefix in home, no more weird random dbus and polkit failures or stale file conflicts. But remember, Nate is involved in KDE development. He is familiar with this tooling and knows what he's doing. That doesn't mean you shouldn't try it, but just keep in mind things can go badly. Still not enough power? I need to be able to swap out kernel modules and base packages at runtime. And if that's you, this is just not the distro for you. This is an immutable system, and if you want to go and do that, that's fine. There are tons of traditional Linux-based operating systems out there that serve this purpose. If your goal really is to build your own OS for your own personal or commercial purposes, it's hard to go wrong with Arch Linux. This is why I like Nate. Nate has the correct opinion here. It's one of the tools we use to build KDE Linux. In fact, in a lot of ways, it's more of an OS building toolkit than it is an OS itself. Once you get Arch to a state you're happy with, you never want to touch it. Until you change everything, and then you break something. I do appreciate the fact that there is clearly a vision for this project. This project is not for everyone. It may not be for you, but they have a group of people that this is targeted at. This is how you build a good project. You don't try to build something for everyone, you have a goal in mind, and you work towards that goal. Now, it's okay to change your goal, but you need to keep that scope in mind and make sure you don't go completely off the rails and start addressing things that have nothing to do with what you want the project to be. If it's all Flatpak and containers and stuff, does it really showcase Plasma and KDE software in the best light? Well, yes, and in many cases, absolutely not. So a couple of KDE apps are shipped as Flatpaks, and the rest you download using Discover will be Flatpacked as well. But we do ship Dolphin, Console, Arc, Spectacle, Discover, InfoCenter, System Settings, and some other system-level apps on the base image rather than as Flatpaks. The truth is, Flatpak is currently a pretty poor technology for system-level apps that want deep integration with the base system. We tried Dolphin and Console as Flatpaks for a while, but the user experience was just terrible. So for the alpha release, these apps are on the base OS where they can properly integrate with the rest of the system. There's no reason to torture people with issues that we know won't be fixed anytime soon. We know it is broken, we know it's not going to be fixed, so let's just not put anyone through that. Other apps not needing a deep level of system integration are fine as Flatpaks right now, and we're engaging with the Flatpak folks to see how we can push technology forward to work better for deep integration use cases. Again, this is something that, say what you will about snaps, Canonical did put a lot of work into this specific use case because they wanted to do really stupid things with snaps. For Flatpaks, they've been mainly focused around the desktop, so this area has just not been developed anywhere near as much yet. One of KDE Linux's other goals is to be a testbed for bringing new technologies to KDE. Our software that behaves awkwardly when sandboxed or run on a file system other than ext4 represents something for us to fix, because those technologies aren't going away. We need to be embracing that future, not ignoring it. KDE Linux both helps and forces us to do it. This should be exciting, new technology is fun, you get to help guide the future. Let's not get caught up yelling at clouds here. Right now, if you want to go and check it out, there is a link to go and download it. This is the same link I showed in my prior video. This link has just never gone away. Keep in mind, there are some basic requirements. Again, a UEFI system, an x86-64 CPU, at least a gig of RAM. You should have that. And 6 gigabytes of storage. Really, this is only going to be a problem if you're trying to run it inside of a virtual machine. Besides that, though, your main desktop should have it, but I don't know how many of you are going to want to run it directly on hardware. Also, do keep in mind the limitations with NVIDIA GPUs. If you're running NVIDIA, make sure you go and check what version you have and whether you're going to be using the open source drivers correctly, or if there's going to have to be some additional work to get the drivers actually properly functioning. So, are you going to use KDE Linux? Does it sound like something that interests you? Do you care about it whatsoever? I'd love to know. Let me know your thoughts down below. And do you happen to be a KDE Neon user? Also, let me know about that. I hope there's at least one of you. I know there's at least one that watches this channel, and you're probably 50% of the users. So anyway, go subscribe, go like the video, and if you want to become one of these amazing people over here, check out the Patreon subscribe style Liberapay linked in the description down below. That's going to be it for me, and I like KDE. It's cool.